97% of Mercedes owners are unknowingly shortening their car's lifespan every single week. They trust the service schedule, they trust the dealer, they trust the badge on the hood, but what happens inside that engine differs from what an informed owner would ever allow. 17 hidden tricks, every single one ignored right now, on cars exactly like yours. Number 1 will make you genuinely angry. Let's get into it. Number 17, the coolant. Color. Lie. Most Mercedes owners never look at their coolant. They assume the dealer topped it up correctly and moved on. That assumption is costing engines. Mercedes specifies a specific factory-approved HOAT coolant meeting, Mercedes spec 325.0 or later for a reason. The alloys in Mercedes cooling systems, particularly the aluminum components, react chemically with the wrong coolant chemistry over time. Most quick lube shops and independent garages top off with whatever pink or green universal coolant is sitting on the shelf. Wrong coolant does not fail immediately. It fails slowly. It deposits scale on aluminum surfaces, degrades the water pump seal, and reduces heat transfer efficiency inside the radiator over a period of years. By the time the damage is visible, the repair bill runs into thousands. The fix costs less than $30. Drain, flush, and refill with the correct Mercedes spec coolant every 4 years, regardless of color. Coolant that still looks clean is not necessarily still working. The chemistry degrades before the color changes. And that is just the first fluid. What the wrong fluid is doing inside your transmission right now makes this look like a minor inconvenience. That is number 16. Number 16, the transmission fluid. Nobody changes. Ask your dealer when your Mercedes transmission fluid was last changed. Most owners receive one of two answers: a blank look or the phrase, "It's a sealed unit, it's filled for life." Filled for life is one of the most expensive lies in the automotive industry. Mercedes 7, G-tronic, and 9 G-tronic transmissions run on a specific fluid, MB236.14 or MB236.15, that degrades with heat cycling over time. As the fluid breaks down, its friction modifier additives lose their calibration. The transmission begins hunting between gears, shifting with slight hesitation, and generating microscopic clutch pack wear particles that circulate through the valve body. Those particles are the beginning of a transmission replacement conversation that starts around the 90,000-mile mark for owners who never change the fluid, and is virtually absent for owners who changed it every 60,000 miles. A transmission fluid service on a Mercedes costs between $250 and $400. A transmission replacement costs between $4,000 and $8,000. The mathematics are not complicated. If you are enjoying what this breakdown is revealing about your Mercedes, subscribe right now. Now, there is a fluid even fewer owners think about that is quietly destroying a component Mercedes considers the single most expensive part of the entire car. That is number 15, and it has no warning light. Number 15, the differential, fluid that destroys silently your Mercedes rear. Differential contains hypoid gears operating under extreme pressure loads. They require a specific gear oil, a GL5 rated fluid meeting, Mercedes MB23 5.8 specification, to survive long term. Most independent service centers drain and refill with a generic GL5 without checking the Mercedes viscosity and additive specification. Some never drain it at all, operating under the same filled for life assumption that kills transmissions. Hypoid gear wear is invisible until it is catastrophic. There are no warning lights for differential wear, no dashboard notification that the limited slip clutch packs are glazing. The first symptom most owners experience is a whine under load that the dealer quotes between $2,000 and $5,000 to repair. Differential fluid service every 50,000 miles with the correct Mercedes spec gear oil costs under $100. It is not on the standard service menu at most dealerships. You have to ask for it specifically. The differential is losing fluid quietly, but further up the drivetrain, Mercedes quietly extended a maintenance interval on paper while knowing exactly what it costs owners who follow it. That is number 14. Number 14, the spark plug, interval deception. Mercedes extended their spark plug replacement interval to 100,000 miles on iridium plugs. Technically, the plugs survive that long. Practically, they should not stay that long. By 60,000 miles on American E10 ethanol blended fuel, Mercedes iridium spark plugs accumulate deposit buildup on the electrode that subtly alters the spark characteristics. The gap widens fractionally. The ignition event becomes less precise. The knock control system compensates with timing retard. That compensation is silent. No warning light. No obvious misfire, just a gradual drift in combustion efficiency that contributes to fuel consumption increases and carbon buildup accelerating at the intake valves and combustion chamber surfaces. Replacing spark plugs at 60,000 miles instead of 100,000 miles costs approximately $300 on a V6 and around $400 on a V8. The fuel economy and combustion efficiency recovery pays that cost back within 20,000 miles of driving. Dirty plugs feed a dirty engine, and the component sitting directly upstream of those plugs is restricting your airflow right now without a single warning light. That is number 13. Number 13, the air filter. Restriction. Nobody measures. Mercedes air filters do not fail dramatically. They restrict gradually, and the restriction is almost never measured at service intervals. A partially blocked air filter reduces the air charge entering the combustion chamber. The engine management system compensates by adjusting fuel delivery to maintain the calibrated air-to-fuel ratio. The result is an engine working harder to breathe, consuming more fuel to produce the same power output, and running at slightly elevated intake temperatures that increase the frequency of knock events the computer quietly manages. The restriction reaches a measurable efficiency threshold long before the filter looks obviously dirty. A filter at 60% flow capacity still looks gray rather than black. Most service technicians making a visual check do not flag it for replacement. Replace your Mercedes air filter every 20,000 miles regardless of appearance. The cost is between $40 and $80. The fuel economy contribution from unrestricted airflow compounds with every other efficiency gain on this list. The air filter restricts from outside the engine. Number 12 shows what is strangling your engine from the inside, and it is the repair most mechanics misquote by thousands of dollars. Number 12, the breather system. Failure. Nobody diagnoses. The positive crankcase ventilation system on your Mercedes has one job. It routes oily vapor from the crankcase through a separator and back into the intake manifold. When it works correctly, it keeps the crankcase at the correct pressure, removes combustion blow by gases, and recirculates vapor cleanly. When the PCV system fails, and on Mercedes Mercedes M272 and M273 engines it fails predictably between 80,000 and 120,000 miles, the crankcase pressurizes. Pressurized crankcase forces oily vapor past valve stem seals and into the combustion chamber. Oil burns in the combustion event. Carbon deposits on intake valves accelerate dramatically. Oil consumption increases without any obvious external leak. Most Mercedes owners experiencing this symptom are told they need an engine overhaul. The actual repair is a $30 breather separator valve that takes 40 minutes to replace. The PCV failure is one of the most misdiagnosed and overquoted repairs in the Mercedes independent service market. Knowing it exists and asking for it specifically can save owners between $1,000 and $4,000 in unnecessary engine work. The PCV pushes oil upward. The next number shows where that oil ends up and why it triggers a chain of misdiagnoses that cost owners 3 to 4 times what the original fix would have. Number 11, the valve cover. Gasket slow drain. Mercedes valve. Cover gaskets on the M272, M273, and OM642 engine families fail predictably between 80,000 and 100,000 miles. The failure is not explosive. It is a slow seep of oil from the gasket perimeter that runs down the engine block and burns on hot exhaust components beneath. The symptom most owners notice first is a faint burning smell after parking. By the time the smell is present, the leak has usually been running for months. The real danger is not the oil loss. It is where the oil migrates. On M272 and M273 engines, a weeping valve cover gasket on the right bank channels oil directly toward the ignition coil boots. Oil-contaminated coil boots cause intermittent misfires that generate fault codes, trigger dealer diagnostics costing hundreds of dollars, and result in coil and plug replacements that temporarily fix the symptom without addressing the source. Valve cover gasket replacement on a Mercedes costs between $400 and $700. Replacing it proactively at the first sign of seeping eliminates the downstream misfire diagnosis cycle. Replacing it reactively after the misfires begin costs 3 to 4 times more across the complete repair sequence. Inside that valve cover sits a $30 plastic plate that most mechanics replace the gasket without ever touching. When it cracks, it starts a carbon problem far worse than the leak itself. Number 10, the oil separator plate that starves engines on Mercedes 6 and V8 petrol engines. A plastic oil separator plate sits inside the valve cover assembly. Its function is to prevent oil from being drawn directly into the intake manifold by the PCV system. Over time, heat cycling causes the plastic to develop micro cracks. The cracked separator allows oil to bypass directly into the intake stream. In volumes the PCV system was never designed to handle. The result is a progressive intake valve carbon problem that is more severe than normal PCV vapor accumulation. because raw oil rather than vapor is reaching the valves. Carbon accumulation accelerates. Intake restriction develops faster. Combustion quality degrades more rapidly. The separator plate costs between $40 and $90 in parts. Labor is included in any valve cover gasket service. Replacing both simultaneously is standard practice in every Japanese and German fleet maintenance protocol for these engine families. Most American Mercedes owners replace the gasket alone when the service is eventually performed, leaving the cracked separator in place. The carbon accumulation resumes at the accelerated rate within months. Carbon builds silently from below, but there is a failure above the engine that announces itself with a sound most owners completely ignore, and by the time they stop ignoring it, the repair has multiplied several times over. That is number 9. Number 9. The coolant pump pre-failure. Window Mercedes electric auxiliary coolant pumps, particularly on V8 and V12 models and all turbocharged diesel variants, have a predictable failure window. They fail progressively rather than suddenly. The early failure signature is audible, a slight whirring or ticking from the pump location that owners mistake for normal operating noise. A failing auxiliary coolant pump reduces coolant circulation to the turbocharger and cylinder head during the hot soak period after shutdown. Reduced circulation allows heat to concentrate in areas the cooling system was designed to keep controlled. The result over repeated heat soak cycles is accelerated wear on head gasket surfaces and turbocharger bearing housings. The auxiliary pump costs between $150 and $300. The head gasket job it prevents costs between $2,000 and $5,000. The turbocharger replacement, it prevents costs between $1,500 and $4,000. Catching that whirring sound early is the difference between a $300 fix and a $5,000 engine job. But the damage happening silently inside your fuel injectors right now has no sound at all. That is number 8, and it is where your fuel economy is quietly disappearing. Number 8. The fuel injector. Slow failure. Mercedes direct injection. Fuel injectors operate at pressures exceeding 2,000 pounds per square inch. They are precision components with tolerances measured in microns. On American E10, ethanol blended fuel, deposit accumulation on the injector. TIPS begins altering the spray pattern after 10,000 miles. The spray pattern change is invisible and silent. The engine computer compensates for the degraded combustion quality by increasing fuel delivery. Fuel consumption rises by 3 to 5% from injector deposit alone. The compensation continues, the deposits worsen, and the fuel economy gap widens with every single tank. Japanese fleet engineers documented a specific $2 solution to this problem that addresses injector deposits, intake valve carbon, and combustion efficiency simultaneously, and most American Mercedes owners have never heard of it. The full protocol is coming at number 1. But before that, there are 8 more components being silently damaged right now. If this is changing how you see your service receipts, subscribe now and hit the notification bell. Every video on this channel follows the engineering evidence, not the dealer's recommended revenue cycle. The second half of this list is where the most expensive damage is hiding. Number 7. The brake fluid moisture. Problem: brake fluid is hygroscopic. It absorbs moisture from the atmosphere continuously, regardless of whether the brake system has been opened or serviced. Mercedes specifies DOT4 brake fluid with a minimum dry boiling point of 230 degrees Celsius, that's 446 degrees Fahrenheit. As moisture content rises, the boiling point falls. At 3% moisture content, a level reached in approximately 2 years of normal service, the boiling point has dropped sufficiently that aggressive braking on mountain descents or repeated high-speed braking can produce vapor lock in the brake lines. Vapor lock causes a momentary loss of braking pressure that manifests as a soft or spongy pedal under conditions where maximum braking is needed most. Mercedes recommends brake fluid replacement every 2 years. Most owners ignore this interval because brake fluid degradation has no visual indicator and produces no dashboard warning until the failure condition is reached. Brake fluid replacement costs between $80 and $150. It is the cheapest safety-critical maintenance item on the entire service schedule and the most frequently skipped. The brakes fail suddenly under load. What is happening to your suspension is slower and costs more in ways most owners never connect to maintenance. That is number 6. Number 6. The suspension. Bushing hardening timeline. Mercedes suspension geometry is calibrated around specific rubber bushing compliance values. The bushes flex by a controlled amount under cornering and braking loads, providing the precise handling balance the engineers designed for. Rubber suspension bushings harden with age and heat cycling. The hardening is gradual and invisible. Handling does not deteriorate suddenly. It drifts. The car feels slightly less composed over rough surfaces. Straight line tracking feels fractionally less precise. Cornering loads transfer with slightly less control. Most owners attribute these changes to tire wear or road conditions. By the time the hardening is severe enough to be obvious, the camber and toe angles have been operating outside specification for years. Tire wear has been accelerating. The chassis has been absorbing cornering loads through metal-to-metal contact rather than controlled rubber compliance. Bush replacement on a full suspension, refresh costs between $800 and $2,000. The tire wear that accelerated during the years of ignored bushing, hardening typically represents a larger cost than the bush replacement itself. The suspension hardens mechanically and gradually. Number 5 is an electrical failure that happens instantly the moment a new battery goes in without one specific step, and dealers are profiting from every owner who skips it. Number 5, the battery registration requirement. Dealers hide. When you replace the battery in a modern Mercedes, the replacement battery must be registered to the car's engine management system using a diagnostic tool. This tells the battery management system the age, type, and capacity of the new battery so it can calibrate the charging rate and alternator load accordingly. An unregistered replacement battery receives the same charging profile as the old battery it replaced. If the old battery was flagged as aged and degraded, the charging system continues applying the high recovery charge rate appropriate for a degraded battery to a brand new battery. Chronic overcharging of a new battery degrades it in months rather than years. Dealers charge between $50 and $100 for battery registration and have a significant financial incentive to sell replacement batteries through their own parts department. Independent shops often replace batteries without registration because they lack the correct diagnostic tool. A Mercedes-compatible diagnostic tool with battery registration capability, Autel, Launch, or iCarSoft, costs between $150 and $300. For any owner planning to keep their Mercedes long-term, the investment pays back on the first battery replacement it correctly registers. Battery mismanagement kills a new part in months. Number 4 shows the internal engine failure that kills components even faster, and it starts with a sound on cold mornings that almost every owner dismisses as completely normal. Number 4, the camshaft adjuster. Sludge sensitivity. Mercedes variable valve, timing systems, the camshaft adjusters on M272 and M273 engines in particular operate on oil pressure. The adjuster units contain narrow oil galleries and small solenoid-controlled valves that respond to engine oil pressure pulses to advance and retard camshaft timing. These galleries are sensitive to oil sludge accumulation in a way no other component in the engine is. Oil that is slightly overdue for a change, or oil that is the wrong specification, or oil contaminated by moisture from a quick-lube bulk dispenser begins depositing sludge in the adjuster galleries at a disproportionate rate compared to the rest of the engine. The first symptom is a timing chain rattle on cold start that disappears after 30 seconds of warm-up. Most owners and many service technicians dismiss this as normal cold start behavior. It is not. It is the camshaft adjuster responding slowly to oil pressure because the gallery is partially restricted. Ignored, the rattle progresses to a persistent knock. The camshaft adjuster replacement on a Mercedes M272 V6 costs between $1,200 and $2,400 depending on which bank and whether the timing chain and tensioners are replaced simultaneously as the service protocol requires. The camshaft adjuster rattle is the warning before the warning. Number 3 is what happens when that warning is ignored, and it is the most catastrophic and expensive failure on this entire list. Number 3, the timing chain. Tension. Lie. Mercedes moved from timing belts to timing chains on the assumption that chains would last the life of the engine. On M272 and M273 engines built between 2004 and 2011, that assumption was wrong in a specific and documented way. The plastic guide rails that control timing chain tension on these engines wear at a rate the original design did not anticipate. As the guides wear, chain slack develops. The tensioner compensates to a point, then reaches its mechanical limit. Once the tensioner reaches its limit, chain slack begins affecting camshaft timing accuracy. The failure mode is progressive and quiet until it is catastrophic. A stretched timing chain operating on worn guides eventually jumps a tooth on the sprocket. When a timing chain jumps, the valve timing shifts suddenly. On an interference engine, which Mercedes engines are, the valves contact the pistons. The engine is destroyed internally in the fraction of a second it takes the crankshaft to complete one revolution. The repair is a complete engine replacement, or a rebuild that costs between $6,000 and $12,000. Timing chain and guide inspection on high mileage M272 and M273 engines cost between $200 and $400. It requires removing the valve covers to inspect guide wear directly. Most dealers do not include it in standard service intervals. It should be performed at every 100,000-mile service without exception. The timing chain failure destroys the engine in seconds. Number 2 is the single maintenance practice that protects every component on this list at the same time, and most owners are getting it completely wrong. Number 2, the oil specification, that changes everything. Every component discussed in this list, the camshaft adjusters, the timing chain guides, the PCV system, the valve train, the turbocharger bearings, shares one vulnerability. They are all bathed in engine oil. They all depend on that oil being the correct specification, changed at the correct interval, and not contaminated before it enters the engine. Mercedes specifies low SAPS oil meeting, MB229.5 or MB229.52. Specification for most current models. This is not a preference, it is an engineering requirement. The low sulfated ash content protects catalytic converters and diesel particulate filters. The specific additive chemistry protects the narrow oil galleries and the camshaft adjusters. The correct viscosity maintains the oil film thickness the turbocharger bearings require at cold start. Generic oil labeled as meeting European specifications but not specifically carrying EBIM MB229.5 approval differs in additive chemistry in ways that matter over a long service interval. It is not dramatically wrong, it is marginally wrong, in a way that compounds across 100,000 miles of usage. Change your Mercedes oil every 7,000 miles maximum, regardless of the service interval indicator, using only oil carrying the specific MB approval number for your engine. The cost difference between correct MB spec oil and generic European spec oil is between $15 and $30 per service. The cost difference between a healthy camshaft adjuster and a failed one is between $1,500 and $2,400. The right oil protects everything internally. Number 1 is the $2 fuel routine that works on top of the correct oil to protect what the oil cannot reach. And it is the protocol almost no American Mercedes owner has ever used. Number 1. The $2 Japanese protocol that ties it all together. Japanese fleet engineers maintaining European luxury cars in ethanol. Blend Markets documented a specific protocol most American Mercedes owners completely ignore. Here it is. Add 1 bottle of polyethyramine-based fuel additive like Techron Concentrate Plus to a nearly empty tank. Then fill up with the highest octane premium fuel available, preferably ethanol-free. Drive that tank down to near empty under normal driving conditions and repeat the additive every second fill-up. Then, once per tank when the engine is fully warm, perform 3 to 4 controlled full-throttle accelerations on a clear highway stretch. Don't redline it and don't race. Just use strong, sustained acceleration to generate the intake airflow and high combustion temperatures needed to blow out softened carbon deposits before they harden permanently. This works because polyethyramine dissolves injector tip deposits over time, restoring the factory spray pattern. Cleaner combustion reduces the unburned hydrocarbon load reaching your oxygen sensors, while the high-load highway runs physically flush away the deposits loosened by the additive. Fleet data shows up to a 15% improvement in fuel economy for high-compression European engines running in ethanol markets. For long-term reliability, it means cleaner intake valves, slower sensor degradation, less carbon buildup, and fewer engine aging knock events. It costs just a few bucks every other fill-up, and you can buy the additive at any auto parts store in America. That is the full list. 17 hidden tricks. Not one requiring a dealer appointment. Not one requiring specialty tools. Every single one being ignored by the majority of Mercedes owners on the road right now. If this list is changing what you do at your next service interval, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell right now. The next video is already loading on your screen. Click it before you close out and we'll see you there. Till then, drive smart, spend less, make your car last.